So this is my third iteration of this review right now. I've been going back and forth of my feelings, and despite all the good and the new upgrades, and believe me, there's a lot of new stuff here, I personally wouldn't buy the new Razer Blackshark V3 Pro. So let's get into why. So checking it out, this marks the next model in the Blackshark lineup after the 2023 V2 Pro was a major hit. So just 2 years later, Razer drops a fresh upgrade with the new V3 Pro that on paper has a lot going for it with a bunch of new features. And personally, between the Blackshark, the Kraken, and the Barracuda lineup, the Blackshark's been my personal favorite and is definitely the headset that, it's gonna cater and appeal to most gamers, I'd say. It's a top seller in the market and it's a leader in the esports space. So this being their flagship model, it's gonna be their best attempt and their best foot forward. And when you get them in an unbox, I'm sure you can already spot a few new things and changes here, most of which are going to come internally with their new 50mm Triforce biocellulose drivers. We have a new microphone, 4 modes of connectivity, and a lot of software related features, ANC, the list goes on. Let's take a closer look. So on the headset itself, we have a bunch of new buttons and a new layout to the V3 Pro, starting off with the new active noise canceling button to toggle the ANC or their ambient mode. Below that's a new customizable roller, which can do things like adjust your side tone levels, gamer chat mix, or even adjusting their dedicated footstep sound levels. Then below that is a smart switch button, which can toggle through the 9 onboard EQs, or yet another new feature, cycle through the wireless modes from your hyperspeed to Bluetooth, or simultaneous 2.4 GHz and Bluetooth audio. Then over to the right ear cup is your mic mute button, power button, the volume wheel on the side of the ear cup, and then up top, the USB-C port for not only charging, but using these wired. So you can plug this in and charge them and still use this over USB-C if you want to use it wired, but it also comes with a new USB-C to 3.5mm cable, so you can use these on any other compatible device, also with the microphone. So really cool to see this return. But since most people use this wirelessly, their new hyperspeed dongle and the tech here boasts an industry-leading 10 milliseconds versus around 15 to 20 milliseconds on most other wireless headsets. So already out of the gate, just threw a lot of new stuff at you. And just to touch on something real quick, with that new roller underneath and the new 2.4 GHz and Bluetooth simultaneous audio, that roller unfortunately does not adjust that. That's strictly based on your Bluetooth devices settings, so you can adjust that audio and into your PC sound settings. So would have been really cool if this you could toggle between those two modes and the audio levels, but it does not do that unfortunately. And also to touch on their new footsteps sound leveling mode, it does work in theory. It's essentially just going to be boosting the lower end mids and the bass on the fly, which is where a lot of the footstep audio frequencies are. So you can pretty much just do that easily here now with the roller if you have it configured as such in Synapse to have that on the fly adjustment. But also keep in mind the footstep audio frequencies are going to vary on a game to game basis. So how footsteps sound in Call of Duty are going to sound different from how their audio frequencies are in Counter-Strike, for example. So it does work, it's just a matter of how well does it work in a game-to-game basis. Now, compared to the 2023 V2 Pro, visually there isn't a major redesign by any means, but there are a few design changes to the exterior that you've probably noticed already. First, the ear cups now rotate on the hinge, giving you 15 degrees of swivel to better fit your head, versus the V2 Pro, which had that fixed joint on the headband, leaving you to manually adjust them on the yoke, which over time did lead to some damaged units. The volume dial now has a nice neural texture that may seem minor, but does provide some extra grip, making it much easier to adjust the volume versus that smoother plastic dial on the V2 Pro. And for another visual difference, we now have some magnetic faceplates for the ear cups. They're going to be making different, themed ones for like their sponsored esports teams, so you'll be able to customize the look of your headset if you're into that. And taking a closer look, that also exposes the battery cover on the inside, making it easier to unofficially mod or change the battery if you want to buy one on like AliExpress or something. Again, due to them being screwed down and the fact Razer doesn't sell the batteries individually, this is going to be a DIY job, but they make it easier if you want to do this, and they very easily could have just made this inaccessible, but they didn't. Few quick notes about that. I really wish they made this like the SteelSeries Arctis Pro lineup, where you did have readily accessible batteries to swap in and out. Would have been really cool since this is their flagship premium, model for the Blackshark lineup. Would have been great. I can understand why they didn't, because there is no like dedicated dock or base or anything like these SteelSeries headsets have. But still would have been cool, and I feel like, you know, they're half there. This would have been a nice addition here. And regarding these faceplates, there's really no further info on how you can customize these. Like I said, they're gonna have some esports related ones that they said they're gonna do for like giveaways online. I asked if there's a way that we could customize the shells, kind of like they did on the Orochi lineup. If you remember, you can go in and like configure and make custom shells to add to your mouse. They said it's not really in the plans for now. Would have been cool if you could design your own ear cups, you know, the plates for that, but no info yet on that, unfortunately. Now, another quick thing to touch on in terms of the overall design, regarding the hinge here. On the Blackshark V2 Pro, one of the most common complaints, and you can Google this yourself, but a lot of people had issues with the headset breaking at that hinge where it meets the headband. And that's like the only downside to the V2 Pro, was that QC concern. Now, I've never personally had an issue with my units breaking, despite me using the Blackshark headsets for the last few years now. I also, as an adult, treat myself with respect, but I understand, you know, things happen over time. Kids will rage and throw their headsets, but either way, I do understand how this can be a weak spot. And it's unfortunate that that wasn't really addressed. They said it is reinforced here, but this wasn't the issue. It was always up here. Now with them being able to swivel a bit, again, only time will tell whether that helps them, you know, just not break since there is some give now, or if it's, you know, makes it worse because now there's just, you know, less actual reinforcement inside. Only time will tell. Wish that was addressed though, and that was a bit more reinforced. But in terms of the overall design and comfort, again, I've always personally loved the look and the feel of the Blackshark lineup, even back to like before I was doing YouTube, like 2012 with that original Blackshark lineup. Loved it. Still here, feels very, very comfortable. No pressure points. And they do have the large oval over the ear ear cups here, which are new. These are actually new ear pads here. And I believe they're like reverse of what you're probably used to. They have a like pleather on the inside with the mesh on the outside here. They're comfy, they're breathable, and they're a bit larger, so again, they're over the ear, won't have a lot of contact points unless you have some big old Dumbos. And just for a, you know, classic example for you guys, the glasses test, which is always a common request. I don't wear glasses anymore, but it does come in contact with the top of the ear cups, since again, they're a bit larger, but zero pressure points. Now, one of the biggest, you know, upsides to the Blackshark lineup has been the microphone. This is a new mic. Let's check out how it sounds. Now for the mic test, this is their new Razer Hyperclear full band 12mm mic capsule in the Blackshark V3 Pro, which, as you're hearing right now, by itself, all stock, unedited audio, untouched in Synapse, where you can obviously go in, have different EQs, different sound settings for like background illumination. There's all sorts of stuff in Synapse where you can make the mic sound better, but this is it, how it sounds stock, raw, out of the box. Which, when you're listening to right now, you're thinking, okay, yeah, still sounds pretty good. However, now this is the microphone of the 2023 Blackshark V2 Pro, which, as you're hearing now, sounds better than the new microphone we have on the V3 Pro. That being the Hyperclear full band, this the wide band mic at 9mm versus the new 12mm. So pretty interesting that in comparison, this sounds noticeably better, and I think just more clear overall, but more natural sounding as well. I was very taken back when doing this review and the comparison. I was hung up on the mic test for a while, messed with a bunch of different settings and stuff to see, you know, I just couldn't believe that the newer upgraded models sound less. So I reinstalled Synapse, messed around with the PC settings, but no. The 2023 Blackshark V2 Pro just has a noticeably better, more clear sounding microphone than the new model. And then again, just to switch back so you can hear that stark difference between the two models. Here's the thing I'll say about this. If you didn't hear them back to back, you would still say this sounds, you know, more than usable. It's still a good sounding microphone, just in comparison to the better sounding model of the 2023 V2 Pro. It does naturally sound worse in comparison, but still more than usable by itself. Whether you're talking to your friends and Discord or for game chat, it's going to be more than fine.
Where this does benefit, that new 12mm capsule, is gonna be in Synapse, where again you can mess with the EQs if you want to tailor it a little bit to make it sound a little bit better. And then real quick, just to show you guys how you can enhance the microphone, because again, that was all stock. If you enable the broadcast mic setting, which gives it a bit more body in terms of the bass and the high end here, because I feel like otherwise it was just mids with everything disabled. And I have the mic noise cancellation on at about 50%. I think this sounds way better than it does with everything, stock in Synapse.
So a bit of a head scratcher there, and I'm telling you guys, I probably did 10 different mic tests and comparisons. I have 4 different V3 Pro models, so I thought my first one was faulty. Tested all 4, they sound exactly the same. Updated Synapse, reinstalled Synapse, messed with my sound settings and my PC volume settings and stuff. Yeah, it just does sound worse, which is a bummer because it was so good on the V2 Pro. Why mess with what isn't broken? The downgrade is such a bummer. Now, where we do get a big upgrade is in the overall sound quality. Now, with the V2 Pros and with the Razer sort of just sound signature, it is that gamer lively V-shape where it's nice and warm sounding. You get a nice bump in the bass and the sub bass, pretty drowned out mids, and then that sparkly high end side. However, here, I feel like they really leveled out that mids where it's not as recessed and it's just more, tuned up a bit to sound more accurate, which is good. And that's definitely thanks to those new drivers, because with those mids being recessed in the past, you could always mess with it and sort of tune it up a bit in Synapse, but here you don't really have to mess with those mids too much. They are improved, they are more accurate, and you still do get that nice warmth in the bass, and you still do have that sparkly high end, which you can sort of tune down, but I do feel like the new drivers here make this sound more accurate while still being a lively gaming headset. Which again means you still have a lot of leeway when it comes to EQing these or using the different sound profiles that are only gonna make these sound better. Whether it's making them sound more accurate or just tailoring them to your favorite games that you play, the drivers here are really good out of the box. Imaging is always impressive on these. Hearing, gunshots and explosions in the world around me lets me pinpoint who's where and what's coming from each direction. And I mean, you can see from this shot in Battlefield, playing in the swampy environment, missiles and explosions all over the place, and honestly, it's why I continue to play Battlefield still after all these years. The sound design in the games is just so incredible and it's so immersive, so being able to still pinpoint enemies and where they're coming from has always been a strong suit of the Blackshark. Soundstage here, it's not too wide, like obviously open back headsets, but you can enable their THX 7.1.4 surround sound now to virtually increase that. It does come at the cost of the overall sound signature being recessed in a way. I'd say it's still, more than usable, but it does help widen the soundstage a bit more. Everyone, prefers different things when they're gaming and what they're playing. But where the surround sound differs now versus the old models is that the 7.1.4 means you now have 4 virtual overhead speakers. So you're, virtually getting more height and depth to your audio, which is gonna benefit in games that aren't so linear. So games where you have, enemies vertically above you in buildings and stuff like that. Again, in some games, it's gonna sound really good if it has a good sound design overall, and in other games, it's not gonna add too much. For open world games, FPS games, you're gonna hear that widened virtual soundstage now if you have that enabled. And then one more thing to touch on here is with the new active noise canceling. And honestly, to me, it didn't really impress me too much. It did work, and in Synapse, there are 4 different ANC modes, so you can change it to be more aggressive or less, but I didn't feel that it really did wonders. It does work in my immediate space to block out fan noise or even some keyboard sounds, but my usual test with ANC is I'll just snap my fingers around my head, which is still kind of high pitched, and if I could hear that, then it's not doing too much. And honestly, for me, with ANC on, even at the 4th, the highest setting in Synapse, I still could hear that, and it just really wasn't doing too much for me personally. Just to touch on Synapse real quick, because again, while it's not the most exciting, there are a lot of features in here to customize the Blackshark V3 Pro. Whether again, it's the different ANC levels, configuring what happens when you get a call when you're on your 2.4 gigahertz and Bluetooth mode, different audio enhancements from normalization, bass boost, or the vocal clarity. There's even a toggle to enable that 10 milliseconds ultra low latency. Then obviously you have your mic settings to adjust the gain, some other, virtual enhancements like vocal clarity, increasing the noise canceling on the mic, your noise gate, and just making your own EQ and stuff to make it sound better. You do have a lot of options here inside of Synapse, which is a plus, despite, Synapse being a downside to a lot of people. And then obviously when you go over to your standard, sound modes, again, make your EQs, whether it's their preset ones for games, movies, or music, or their dedicated esports modes, there is a lot of flexibility with their EQs, which is impressive. They've worked with a lot of esports players on some of the top esports games to improve the sound of the game, not to make them sound more accurate, but to give you an advantage. So whether that means drowning out a lot of the frequencies to just improve footsteps and gunshots, they have a lot of different modes, so you can really tailor these to the game you play. I'm telling you guys. I know people hate Synapse, but it's really powerful. All right, my end rant now to bring this all together and to justify why I feel the way I do. Despite all the good and all the new features this has going for it, again, brand new drivers that sound incredible here. It has ANC. It has the simultaneous Bluetooth and 2.4 gigahertz audio, which is a massive feature that a bunch of people love and have requested. Even has, the wired modes again, even over 3.5 millimeters. So much good going for it. But here's my personal take. I don't look for those features personally. I never use Bluetooth and 2.4 gigahertz simultaneously. I know a bunch of people do. I know a bunch of people do. I'm not someone who looks for that because I just never use that or benefit from it. The ANC I felt was very weak versus others out there on the market. Again, my main headset that I've been using is the Alienware Pro Wireless. That sounds way better, I think, for the ANC versus what we have here. The Sony and Bose that I've used over the years are 10 times better than this. Even something like AirPods or my $70 Nothing Ear A earbuds, the noise canceling on this is so much better than what we have here. And not to mention the substantial downgrade, I would say, in the microphone quality versus the V2 Pro, which is just still mind-boggling to me at how much worse it sounds in comparison. Now, the majority of this is going to be me comparing it to the V2 Pro, because for the price of the new V3 Pro at $250, I would say that price is more than fine for all the new features on here if you can use them. If you look for those features, $250 is not too bad, considering a lot of headsets now are around $300 and up for some flagship models out there. So $250 for all the new features here, not too bad. However, the Blackshark V2 Pro is about $150. That's been on sale a bunch recently. I've seen it at $150 on Amazon. So can I justify that extra $100? I personally can't. I feel like if I had the V2 Pro, I wouldn't feel a major need to upgrade. And even just for me messing around on my PS5, I was using the V3 Pro, the PlayStation model, and I had a great time with it. It sounded great just playing, some casual games like Tony Hawk, where it's some gameplay elements, a lot of music and stuff. It sounded really good. I had a good time with it, but it's would I buy a $250 headset just to have, casually a good time? No, not when I can get that with a $150 headset of the older model on the V2 Pro. Now, again, I understand with these reviews, a lot of it is subjective, which is why you go and you watch reviews on YouTube. You want to look for people's opinions. I can't justify that $100 price point difference here on the new model when the features that I really care about the most sound better on the V2 Pro with the microphone. And again, I just don't utilize simultaneous audio, and I wouldn't use the ANC on this because it's just not nearly as good as other models that I've tested. So yeah, I would not buy this headset personally. I would buy the $100 less V2 Pro, or stick with that, or just check other models out there. So that's my personal justification for this review, giving you guys my honest feedback. Again, this is my third time doing this video over the last week. My opinions have gone up and down, they've changed, and in the end, I just couldn't and wouldn't buy this headset. So guys, if you want to buy it, I'll put it down below. If you want to spend $150 for the V2 model, I'll put that down below as well. But that'll wrap it up for my review of the new Razer Blackshark V3 Pro. Like I said, all linked down below. If you liked this review, if you agreed, you found it useful, let me hear your thoughts down below or drop a thumbs up to show your support if it helped you out. Feel free to follow me on all socials at randomfrankp. And last, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Hope you enjoyed. Have a good day.